NATO is the only platform where Europe and North America engage every day on such strategic issues which matter to our shared security. As we look to the leaders' meeting next month, Europe and North America are doing more together than for many years. We are stepping up across the board and focus on the future. With that, I'm ready to take your questions.
Okay, we'll start with Reuters, second row. Second row, please. Second row, please. Thank you.
Robin Emmett from Reuters. Secretary General, we understand that today you heard from both Germany and France on two proposals about NATO's future. I wondered which of the proposals you feel has the most merit, and whether you personally would be ready to take on the role as leading some kind of wise group, wise persons group. Thank you.
First of all allies expressed very strong support to NATO and to the importance of transatlantic unity. The proposal from Minister Heiko Maas received support from many allies, and I think it has value, and we will now look into it as we prepare for the upcoming leaders meeting, and then we will decide what to do.
James, last row there. Over there, and then we'll come back to the gentleman in the front row.
Thank you. Yes, Brooks Singer, Jane's Defense Weekly. I have a question about NATO and Ukraine. With all the efforts that the Allies have done to help Ukraine with its trust funds, that is, strengthen its military, boost cyber defenses, install democratic and transparent control of the military, I wonder if you consider it problematic or not that one ally has tried to use its bilateral military assistance to Ukraine for purely domestic political purpose, something that undermines the alliance's political effort as a whole to help a partner country. Let me rephrase that. I'm not asking you to pass judgment on the single ally's domestic agenda, but whether its actions have had or will have a deleterious effect on the alliance's goals and effectiveness in Ukraine. Thank you.
If I started to respond to that, I will be part of domestic political debate, and that is not something I will do. Because that will only divert attention from what is my main responsibility, and that is to make sure that allies stand united as we continue to provide political and practical support to Ukraine. And we are stepping up, both within the NATO framework, but also NATO allies provide bilateral support. I encourage them to do more of all of that, because we stand in solidarity with Ukraine, and for us it is extremely important to not accept illegal annexation of Crimea, and to help the Ukrainians to modernize their armed forces, to modernize their defense institutions, and to continue to support them. And again, I will not be part of a domestic discussion in the United States.
We'll go to the front row.
Alexander Atoshnikov, Reform BY Belarus. What would be NATO reaction on possible incorporation of Belarus by Russia?
First of all, I think it will be absolutely wrong if I started to comment on hypothetical situations. What I can say is that for NATO it is extremely important that every nation, including of course Belarus, has the right to choose its own path, has the rights to choose its own security arrangements. And Belarus is a partner of NATO, and of course Belarus should be respected as an independent sovereign nation, so the territorial integrity and the sovereignty should be respected of Belarus as for all other nations in Europe.
Europa Press, lady of that.
General Mana Pitonero from the Spanish news agency Europa Press. If we understood correctly, the French proposal is focusing on the future of NATO, is focusing more on experts doing the job, with you chairing the group, and the French proposal would be more political figures that would, give us more a strategic and political vision. So, which of the two do you think can the two be combined? You think, or should this reflection be left more for experts, or political figures, I don't know, maybe ex-secretary generals or that are also a good knowledge of this House? And another quick question, if I may, on the fight against terrorism and the updated plan. I don't know if that was a chance to also discuss amongst allies the recent deportations of ISIS fighters by Turkey to other countries, if this was at all discussed in the meeting today, and is there a worry, because I think allies are worried about these unilateral steps by Turkey. Thank you.
It was broad support for strengthening NATO and especially the political dimension of NATO as a platform for also political consultations. NATO is that today because we are actually the only platform where North America and Europe sits together, decides together, and do things together when we address important strategic issues, such as, for instance, arms control, the demise of the INF Treaty, which has been high on the NATO agenda for a long time. Our approach to Russia, our dual-track approach to Russia and dialogue with Russia, the fight against terrorism, or the issue of how to strengthen our collective defense. These are issues which NATO has addressed over a long period of time, but not only discussed, but also we have made decisions together. But again, I think it has value to look into how we can further strengthen NATO and the transatlantic bond. We need to look into this as we prepare for the upcoming leaders meeting, and then we will see what will be the final conclusions. We also discussed the fight against terrorism, the importance, and we also agreed on measures to strengthen exchange of intelligence, both when it comes to threats to our own countries, but also related to foreign fighters. The issue of how to deal with ISIS fighters, which are in captivity in northern Syria, was not addressed specifically.
Wall Street Journal. Yeah.
James Marston, Wall Street Journal. Secretary General, are you at all concerned by the French efforts to engage Putin? Some people call it a rapprochement with Putin. Doesn't that run contrary to NATO's efforts with Russia?
It is essential that we are united in our approach to Russia. And that's the reason why I welcome the fact that NATO again and again has been able to unite around a common position towards Russia, especially on the issue of arms control. We of course regret the demise of the INF Treaty, but I welcome the fact that NATO allies have been united all the way, all the steps. We agreed that Russia is responsible for the demise of the INF Treaty. We agreed that Russia is violating the treaty. We had a joint statement, I think it was in August, the 2nd of August, clearly stating that Russia is responsible. And we have also agreed to now address how NATO is responding to the demise of the treaty and to a world without with more Russian missiles. We are looking into our conventional capabilities, air and missile defense, better intelligence, and other ways to respond to the fact that we don't have the INF Treaty anymore. We have been united on this the whole way. So I just highlight or underline the importance of that we continue to be united. The only way to be that is that when there are some different views, we sit down, as we did today, or actually we'll do tonight, and discuss, for instance, Russia and arms control. And I'm confident that when the leaders are meeting in December, I'm confident that we'll also then find a way to agree on the way forward, also related to Russia.
Agence France Presse.
Good evening, Damon Wake, Agence France Presse. You've outlined or given your response twice now to the German proposal by Heiko Maas for a committee to look at strategic political thinking. Could I ask you now to give us your assessment of the French proposal outlined by Minister Le Drian this afternoon, please?
So I will be careful to go too much into details of this discussion. We had a discussion, and the main message is that we are all united on the message of the importance of strengthening NATO. And as we now prepare for the upcoming leaders meeting, we'll find exactly how to make sure that we do that in the best possible way.
Okay. Thank you very much. This concludes this press conference.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It's great to be back in Brussels. Let me first of all thank my NATO colleagues who each expressed their condolences for the loss of the 2 American soldiers in Afghanistan. I want to thank all of them for doing that, and I want to express my personal condolences to their families as well. It's great to be back here too. I want to acknowledge the great news great news that Mr. Kevin King, an American held hostage in Afghanistan for more than 3 years, was released yesterday and will soon be reunited with his family. It's good news too for our Australian friends who were able to get home one of their own also. We had a good day. We were hard at work here in Brussels. Everything we have done has set a positive tone for the leaders' meeting in London next month. President Trump and I look forward to being there. I had a unique opportunity, too, to reflect on the importance of NATO alliance in Berlin earlier this month. I was with my counterpart, Heiko, from Germany. We had a great time. He was a wonderful, gracious host. We celebrated the 30th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall, a place that I had served when I was a young soldier. We, all of us, won the Cold War together. Allied partners protecting freedom, preserving freedom, creating freedom in places that had far too little. It was indeed a victory for free societies over authoritarianism. 30 years later, we again face threats from authoritarian regimes, and again we must face them together. Russia, China, Iran, their value systems are simply very different from ours. They go in an opposite direction. Add the threats that we have from terror around the world, radical Islamic extremism, and cyber threats, and indeed our work remains. Every ally has the responsibility, the duty to confront them, and we're happy with the progress that has been made towards fulfilling the 2018 Brussels Summit commitments. We give our allies full credit for committing to add $100 billion in new defense spending by the end of the year 2020. But it's the first step in our collective security. Security for our people means each country that made the promise to get to 2% of GDP must do so. We need modern capabilities like next generation fighter aircraft, heavier infantry, improved intelligence assets, all of the things that these resources can bring to our collective security. Security for our people means welcoming North Macedonia as well. I had the chance to go there last month as our 30th NATO ally. The United States Senate approved the accession protocol on North Macedonia in October the 22nd, and we look forward to it officially joining our alliance. Strengthening this alliance has never been easy. There have always been challenges. The unity has always been there, but we've confronted differences head on. There are places we need to catch up. Certainly with respect to counterterrorism, there's work to do. We've made progress by updating the NATO Counterterrorism Action Plan and the contributions that NATO has made to the Counter-ISIS Global Coalition, which met in Washington last week. We need to keep up this good work to protect our people. Finally, our alliance must address the current and potential long-term threat posed by the Chinese Communist Party. 70 years ago, the founding nations of NATO came together for the cause of freedom and democracy. We cannot ignore the fundamental differences in beliefs between our countries and those of the Chinese Communist Party. NATO is indeed the most critical strategic partnership in recorded history. The United States led the formation of this alliance, and we are returning our robust leadership today. We're committed to working with our NATO partners to build a strong, stable, prosperous alliance, a free Europe, and a free world that benefits all of our people. I want to thank Secretary General Stoltenberg for all the work he did to put this ministerial together. Happy to take a question or two.
Okay. We'll start with Rebecca Heinrichs.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. My question is on arms control, because I know that that's something that's of interest in the upcoming meeting with NATO as they discuss strategic issues, especially related to Russia. Earlier in the year, President Trump said that we will not negotiate on the issue of missile defense. And both Russia and China have opposed to U.S. Expanding missile defense. Is that still the case, that the United States will not negotiate on the issue of missile defense, even if there are oppositions from an adversary like Russia?
So when I became Secretary of State, in front of us was the INF Treaty. we did what the Trump administration always does. We looked at reality. We recognized the facts. The facts had changed. We had 2 parties to a treaty, only one of which was complying with that treaty. It made no sense to stay in it. And we worked with our European partners to make sure that there was unanimity, that we understood the risks, that we understood the costs, and then moved forward together, declaring that Russia was in violation and that the appropriate thing to do was for the United States to leave that treaty. That goes for a broader set of arms control issues. President Trump will never allow America to enter into any arms control agreement that doesn't make sense for the United States of America, or to renew any existing arms control agreement that expires if it no longer makes sense for America. And so with that as the central core principle, the President has spoken deeply about how the world has changed since New START was originally created. We now have an expanded threat from the Chinese Communist Party. The President's made clear that any time we begin to have a conversation about how to create a strategic structure that secures America, it's no longer the case that it can only be the United States and Russia. And so we will work to make sure that as we move these conversations forward, these dialogues about what's the right way to ensure American national security, whether that's in arms control or, frankly, for that matter, in any other space, we will have the protection of the American people and the stability for the free peoples of the world foremost front and center in how we think about that problem set.
Okay, Jonathan Stearns from Bloomberg. Not here? Okay. Where is?
There you go.
Is that you? Oh, you're not Jonathan
No, but you can
Stearns.
take a shot at
Okay.
it anyway. All right, I like that.
What about Damon Wake from AFP? Are you here? There you go.
Oh, hello, it's Damon Wake from AFP. I'm behind this camera, but don't worry. I wanted to ask first what your analysis or assessment is of the proposals made by France and Germany for committees of reflection on NATO's political strategy for the future. And secondly, on a domestic question, how do you respond to Ambassador Sondland's evidence today that you directed him to coordinate Ukraine policy with the President's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani?
The second one's easy. I didn't see a single thing that I was working. Sounds like you might not have been. I was in meetings all day and haven't had a chance to see any of that testimony. With respect to the proposals, I said, goodness, it's been almost a year and a half since I was first Secretary of State and would have repeated back in Brussels, it is always the case that every institution, every structure that's been created should constantly be evaluated against whether it's fit for purpose. Is it achieving its ends? Is it delivering against the objectives that were originally set out, or those objectives that were put in place as either the charter was amended or strategic objectives were amended? That certainly goes for NATO as well. I don't know if this is precisely the right moment or if this is the right format. We'll all think about that. But it is eminently reasonable to continue to make sure that alliances that are put together, this critical alliance that is NATO, that it's right, that it's structured properly, that burden sharing is aligned in the right way, that its objectives as these things change, right? When it was created, counterterrorism wasn't a part of what it did. Today we have the threat from the Chinese Communist Party. That wasn't something that NATO was thinking about 70 years ago at its founding. It is, in my judgment, always appropriate to be constantly ensuring that we are using all of our resources that come from American taxpayers or taxpayers from our NATO allies, that we're using those in the ways that prioritize the risks and deliver good and effective outcomes.
Okay, last question. We'll go to Carol Morello, Washington Post.
Mr. Secretary, Ambassador Sondland testified today in Washington that there was a clear quid pro quo over Ukraine and that everyone was in the loop, including you. Is that true? And do you think you should consider recusing yourself from decisions involving documents provided to Congress on Ukraine? Thank you, sir.
I didn't see the testimony. I'm not going to recuse myself from this. I know precisely what American policy was with respect to Ukraine. I was working on it, and I'm incredibly proud of what we've accomplished. We delivered remarkable outcomes for the Ukrainian people, and I hope that we're able to continue to do so. We got them the defensive systems they needed. We got them the resources. The previous administration refused to do that, and I'm proud. I'm proud that President Trump led that effort to get our policy on Ukraine right. We not only planned for it. We not only laid out a plan forward, but we executed and delivered on it. We'll continue to do that. Our focus at the State Department is on making sure that we get our policy right, execute it flawlessly, and deliver security on behalf of the American people. We've done it for my first year and a half. I intend to do it every single day, and I'm counting on my team to remain focused on that as well. Thanks, everybody.